Standard clinical training operates on a very clean, logical assumption. When people are in crisis, they will explicitly ask for help. But severe trauma rewires how we communicate. People in the middle of a genuine crisis do not politely raise their hands. They speak in hidden codes, driven entirely by fear and self-preservation. We can see this breakdown clearly right here. Textbooks expect a straight, linear transfer of information. The reality looks much more like this tangled secondary network, a dynamic called double language. In the field, you might see a mother and daughter smiling for a social worker, while secretly agreeing to talk about the real problem later, once the authorities leave. If a practitioner misses those unspoken cues, their well-intentioned intervention usually backfires. They check their required boxes, walk out the door, and leave the client isolated to deal with the fallout behind closed doors. Enter someone like Emma. If you look at her through a traditional corporate lens, her background reads like a list of liabilities: severe past trauma, visual impairment, neurodivergence, and a history of addiction. Stepping into the world of crisis coaching, she described herself as a terrified mouse. She was shaking, constantly anxious, and completely overwhelmed by basic social interactions. But high-stakes crisis intervention doesn't require polished boardroom etiquette. Those exact vulnerabilities, the trauma, the neurodivergent processing, are the highly specialized diagnostic tools required to actually decode human behavior when things get dangerous. Over the last year, Emma has logged more than 1,000 hours of rigorous field and classroom work within the Recovery Connection system. Her training operates inside a strict 3-part framework: theory, practice, and process. The theory layer requires intense logistical mastery. A single case manager has to simultaneously track clinical transport, medication schedules, daily nutrition, and the volatile family dynamics waiting outside the clinic. Emma leans heavily into her neurodivergence here, describing it as a chaos mind. She leverages that specific cognitive wiring as a multivariable processor to instantly organize dozens of competing data points into a clear, actionable matrix. Of course, perfectly organized logistics are completely useless if you lack the psychological capacity to execute them while someone is screaming at you in a living room. That brings us to the practice layer. In one specific case, Emma walked into a highly volatile domestic dispute involving a vulnerable woman and a deeply dominant male partner. Because of her own lived experience with trauma, Emma instantly recognized the unspoken language operating between the couple. She immediately flagged the tiny, threatening behavioral cues the man was projecting.
She had to confront his shortcomings and establish firm boundaries, all while projecting an unbreakable, calm exterior to hold the tension in the room. The tactical goal was entirely focused on future safety. By neutralizing the immediate tension, she ensured the man wouldn't take his anger out on his partner once Emma eventually left the house. You cannot simulate that specific high-wire tension on a syllabus. Safely navigating it demands the absolute fluency of someone who has survived it themselves. That hyper-local execution scales up rapidly. At 6:45 on a Sunday morning, Emma organized emergency safeguarding for a pregnant woman experiencing a psychotic break right here, near the Middlesbrough Town Center. At the exact same time, she was providing governance and managing funding compliance for a brand new primary school operating thousands of miles away in Uganda. Back in the UK, as a member of the LGBTQ+ community, she facilitated public containers during Pride events, holding her dignity and composure while actively absorbing heavy cultural prejudice. When the internal process of healing is channeled outward, one properly trained practitioner becomes the anchor point for stabilizing individuals, local streets, and international ecosystems simultaneously. Emma has transitioned far beyond the terrified volunteer she started as. Today, she is officially certified as the first master coach for the UK program. Her current focus is acting as the guardian for the Mauni Rainbow platform. It's a specialized AI interface tailored to the LGBTQ+ community, specifically designed to look exactly like this: clean, accessible, and totally free of tangled menus. For someone living with severe visual impairment like Emma, or a user trapped in an acute crisis, a complicated website with 20 different links is an immediate barrier. If the help is hard to access, vulnerable people will simply stop clicking. A university degree on a wall does not automatically grant someone the tactical skill to disarm a violent domestic dispute or talk a stranger down from a morning psychosis. The people most uniquely qualified to repair our fractured human systems
are the exact people who survived them.